Hi guys, welcome to another Rossi audio video. This week is the end of this week is going to be really busy on YouTube. I have tons of videos to upload. I think I'm going to do like 2 or 3 videos a day for the next 2 or 3 or 4 days. This video today is called The Sound of Norway. I wanted to make this like an introduction video to a couple of videos that are coming up soon. I was asked yesterday when it would be uploaded because I put a teaser out on Facebook, and I said either today or tomorrow. It might even be Thursday or Friday, just because I have so many videos in backlog already. So let's just dive straight into The Sound of Norway. And why did I want to make a video like this? Well, just to kind of showcase what a little country like Norway can really do. I mean, if you go 40 years back in time, there was like 4.2 million people in Norway, and today we are probably sniffing, if not, maybe tipped 5 million people. Not much, not much. So that is basically, if you go to New York City and you go up and down, let's say, any of the busy streets like around Wall Street, or you go, let's take Manhattan, there almost lives permanently more people on Manhattan alone than in Norway. During daytime, yeah, with all the people going there, yeah, there's probably about the same amount of people on Manhattan than there's in Norway. I think there's like 2.2 million people in that Manhattan area. So now you get a little point of how small Norway is. But despite that, Norway is, along with Denmark, I want to say Norway and Denmark in the Scandinavian region, is the two hi-fi, the two sound countries of Scandinavia. Sweden is not that big on hi-fi or sound. They have a few here and there, but can't compete with Norway and Denmark. So a lot of good things have come out of Norway and Denmark, for that matter. I wanted to just dedicate a little bit of time to what has come out of Norway. Some of these companies are no longer existing. Some of them are still in business and doing good and thriving. And it's also a build-up to, because I'm going to showcase a couple of companies and a couple of brands later on in other videos. One of them are coming this week. So let's start with the grandfather of all Norwegian companies when it comes to sound. They are the one who put Norway on the map. They are the one who paved the way for all other companies to come later on. And of course, we're talking about Tandberg. Tandberg was massive when they were in their golden days. Today, they are mainly a computer company. Or a technology company, so they don't mess around with sound or anything like that anymore. Tandberg, they had a huge focus in the early days on speakers, amplifiers, reel-to-reel, cassette decks, and they had receivers, they had consoles, they had everything. So they were a very complete company. At some point things changed. It wasn't because they went out of business that stopped it, but they wanted to cut out that part, and they wanted to focus, because Tandberg was a company with a split personality. They were in the 80s, they started doing computers and they were running side by side, but then they kind of decided that hi-fi and sound and audio was like, nah, we're not going to deal with that. They did a few, even though they cut most of that out, they did a few systems and a few things for auditoriums and meeting rooms and stuff like that, and they incorporated that with their computer division. So they basically decided to not go along with the audio anymore, and they just faded that out and it shut down that whole thing. I mean, if they had still been doing it, they could have probably been doing good. But it was a choice they made. But oh my lord, did they make some good stuff when they were in their heyday. They made some of the best reel-to-reels. They made some of the best cassette decks. And they had some really, really good amps. A lot of people think they only had receivers. Think again, they had preamps, they had power amps, and they are good. They're really good, but they're hard to find. And when you find them, you have to pay a good chunk of money for them. They also build speakers that in the early days went along with their receivers and stuff like that. But they also made separate models. One of the models that they had big success with, and they kind of made it like in a fun way because they made them in different colors, was called Facette. And these speakers were really weird looking. I'll see if I can find a picture online and include it in this video. But they were really, and today they're really sought after. And Tandberg was back in the day one of very few companies that could threaten and even make better cassette decks than Nakamichi. So it was like Nakamichi and Tandberg, they went back and forth and they were always competing about who had the best decks. And I have heard both. I heard a Dragon, I've heard the top of the line Tandbergs, and sound wise Tandbergs takes it all. And when it comes to back in the day, if you looked at build quality, I felt that Tandberg was better built. Maybe I'm partial because, hey, my native thing, but I felt that Tandberg had an edge over Nakamichi. Maybe Nakamichi made some more flashy looking things. I'm not going to dispute that, but you know, looks are looks. When you buy stuff like that, you always buy it on performance. So they paved the way for Norway. It's just the same as Denmark had their own little thing that paved the way for their brands. We can look into Denmark later. Now I'm going to go, I have a little cheating note here. We're going to go from Tandberg to another company that has been around for decades. And they're still around today. And they were maybe the one who put Norway on the map when it came to high-end sound and the more expensive and more exclusive part of the hobby or business or whatever you want to call it. And that is Electrocompaniet. It was started by Per Abrahamson, and take a note of that name because it's going to come up later. He started Electrocompaniet and they did great, and they put out some really killer stuff. From the first day they were in business until Electrocompaniet was sold at one point to another Norwegian company, Per Abrahamson really put out, with his partners and his people, put out some killer stuff. Their amplifiers were powerful, they were huge, they were monster looking. I remember I have had the old school, the old looking AW250 and the AW100, which is 100 watt per channel and 250 watt per channel. And oh my lord, are they powerful. They have always been put in a category as very warm sounding with a heavy presence on bass. Suits me well. And I mean, the build quality on Electrocompaniet is like out of this world. I'm sorry about that, guys. Something happened. I don't know what it was. My phone just went black. I was Electrocompaniet. Their build quality is like by far some of the better things out there. And like I was going to say, I know people who bought Electrocompaniet brand new in the 80s, early 90s, and it's still working today. Never had a problem. And when they came out with their AV180 monoblocks, they took the world with storm. Yeah, they were 180 watts each in 8 ohm, but I tell you, they felt more powerful. They sounded more powerful, and all the things with Electrocompaniet is that they're stable down to 2 ohm stereo, so there's never a problem with them. Then they came out with the monoblocks called the Nemo, and oh my freaking god, 600 watt per monoblock in the 90s. That was like not the norm, or not the normal thing to do. You had a few other companies that put out monster amplifiers and monster monoblocks, But when Nemo came out, and with the look that they had, black front with blue lights and stuff, and gold buttons, and a glass plate on top, it looked really high end and it looked nice. I have been so lucky. I could never afford them back in the day myself, but I was so lucky that a customer of mine back in the day, he had a pair of these and he invited me to his house and we listened to them. And he had some, I think it was, the model was Utopia, it was a Focal or Sonus Faber or something. Really high and expensive speakers that are heavy to drive and hard to drive, and those Electrocompaniet Nemos did the job without sweating a bullet, and it was just so nice to listen to. And it was like, I think the whole system was like $150,000-$200,000. I think it was. The speakers of course cost the most. The amps, the 2 amps that he had, the Nemos, was like, had a, I think that the retail price back then was like $24,000, but for a set for 2. But I think the whole system that he had with turntables and DACs and CD players and amps and speakers was like $250,000 in that range. And like I said, I could never afford that, but it was so nice to listen to. I mean, as a Certain Vega guy, you know, we tend to like the sound because of what we feel is a sound that hits our heart and what makes us going and makes us tick. But when you hear a system like that, which is over the top, overkill for everything, you get a different perspective on what really good sound is. So I'm never gonna, I never question anyone's investment strategy when it comes to buying high-end audio. The only thing that I have a problem with is paying $40,000 for a couple of cables. But when it comes to speakers, I sure understand what they're talking about when they say this speaker costs $100,000, but it sounds like it. You can't compare it to a $5,000 speaker, and yes, there is something in that. So Electrocompaniet is a very good company, and they're still running today. And I'm going to come back to Electrocompaniet when we start talking about someone else here, because Electrocompaniet has a finger in a lot of things today. So let's just jump straight off to the side road of Electrocompaniet, because there was also a brand and a company, a small company. I was a single person, to be honest. It was called Dynamic Precision, and this company was located in a place called Kjeller in Norway, and that was like 5 minutes away from my house where I grew up as a kid. So if I jumped on my bike and took off, I would be at that place in 5 minutes. I have over the years, at that point when they started this in the 80s, I was so young then, so I didn't like really move around to meet people, but I met the guy. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Steinar or Stein or something like that. He was from up north, I think, originally, but he had moved down to the south where I lived, and I met him a couple of times later on, and he made some killer amplifiers, and this is why I always recommend Dynamic Precision, or DP. You might hear me refer to them as DP, and their amps were groundbreaking in many ways. Their sound was straightforward, honest. It was like, it's a little bit colder, a little bit more direct sound than the Electrocompaniet, but the biggest difference was they made amplifiers that were like 250 watt per channel, but they had like 1,000 up to 2,000 in damping control, and back in the 80s, early 90s, that was kind of unheard of. So when you listen to a Dynamic Precision amp side by side anything else, one, they had way more control over the speakers than most other amplifiers that I have heard side by side. Their power was like, this can't be 250 watts, this must be more. They were so overbuilt and over dimensioned, and everything was just over the top. and they didn't cost that, well, they cost quite a bit, but not that much if you compare them to others. And I have had a DP 6.4, and I love that amp. They came in two different colors, and it was like gunmetal gray with gold, and it was black with gold as a hi-fi thing. And then they had the same, almost same amp, but they had made it into a pro audio look amp, and you could use it as a pro audio. And they had added some fans, rack handles were different placement, the front was different, but just as good. And they made also the pro audio amps in 400 watts per channel, so they were a little bit upgraded there. The thing with DP was they were always, back in the day, my reference amplifier when it came to power. And with Søren Vega, they are so freaking good. I used the DP 6.4 with some DC, well, it's not DC, but the 1515. I have also tried them on 1215 MK2, and I have tried them on 8015 or 8100, D9, and a bunch of other speakers, and also non-Søren Vega speakers. And I tell you, you can never go wrong with a dynamic precision amplifier. The thing is, Electrocompaniet bought out dynamic precision a few decades ago, or 10, 15, 20 years ago, and so now dynamic precision is, you can go on Electrocompaniet's website, and there's some links there, and you can see their, you know, they own it basically. So that's not a bad thing. Now let's go to the other side road of Electrocompaniet. It's another company called Abrahamson, and like I told you earlier, this name, look out for it later on in the video. And Per Abrahamson, after he sold Electrocompaniet, I think he still stayed on as a consulting, in a consulting kind of manner, and I think he did some solo things on the side, but nothing like in a set form, until he started another company called Abrahamson. And you can see it on them because they look very similar to Electrocompaniet. The philosophy is the same, and I think he still owns the company today. I'm not sure, but I think he does, unless they sold it. Unless he's a Norwegian version of Bob Carver. Start one thing here and start one thing there, and then sell it off and start something else. But I think he's still involved with Abrahamson. And mighty good products for half the cost of what Electrocompaniet cost. So there's a similarity in both looks, design, philosophy, and build quality, but to a more affordable price. So you see, Norway have quite a bit so far. I would be. I have heard a few Abrahamson products, and I like it. I love it. I can't say anything wrong about it. Now, let's go to a smaller thing, and this is not something I'm going to talk about a lot. There's a company called SoundCare, and they make accessories. They make spikes. They make anti-vibration feet and rubber things and stuff like that for speakers, turntables, amps, and all kinds of stuff. I think they even make some racks. Another company from Norway who are involved in the audio business, and they're still running today, and they make some killer stuff. So if you are into that kind of things with spikes and anti-vibration and accessories, then that's a company you can look up and find a website for. So that's a good company. They I never gone too depth in with them. I remember they were sold at Oslo Hi-Fi Center or something, and they were sold at Hi-Fi Klubben, and I had a few experiences with them during the Hi-Fi Klubben thing. So another good company. I'm going to talk about another amplifier company. I think, I haven't looked it up, but I think they went out of business a few years ago, and they were linked with another company that I'm going to talk about. And the amplifier company that I'm talking about now is Audion, spelled A-D-Y-T-O-N. I think they're out of business, but they made some killer stuff back in the day, and they were on the market for many years, 2 or 3 decades at least. and they made some really good stuff. So if you come across some older or vintage Audion, don't feel scared to jump on it. It's really, really good. But since they're out of business, I think they'll shut down the company. You can't really get anything new. And that company was the one company that kind of helped the next company that I want to talk about. And that's another amplifier and electronics company. It's Hegel. And Hegel is today maybe Norway's top-end manufacturer of amps and DACs and preamps and you name it. They have a position in the world as one of the best high-end amplifiers out there, and for damn good reason. And Hegel started out by Bent Holter, I think his name is, and they're located in Oslo. And he was a musician, and they went to places to play. And the band that he played in was called the Hegel Band, and I think they played some Thin Lizzy, Pink Floyd kind of like cover songs or whatever. But when they went on stage and played, some of their amplifiers that they were using broke down, and this was way back in the day, and the place couldn't afford to have those amps repaired. So Bent Holter apparently offered to either repair or build some amplifiers for that place, and that's how they started the Hegel amplifier solutions or something like that. And then they went to Audion to get source parts to build Hegel amplifiers. So Audion was kind of like, yeah, we'll sell you parts. And so they started another amplifier company based on someone else's technology. Pretty freaking amazing. Today Hegel is a staple. They are a pillar. They are a company that a lot of people look up to, and they have some killer freaking amps. I'm going to talk more about Hegel in a separate video because I feel I have to. And they do things in a very Rossi Audio approved way. That's exactly my way of thinking on how you should build amplifiers and build technology used in the sound business. Now, I'm going to go to one of the next big ones in Norway, and now we're going to go into the speaker thing. Well, let's finish up the amplifiers because there's one more company here. The other company that are still in business now is called Doxa. Doxa is maybe not what you would consider a direct competition to Electrocompaniet or Hegel or Audion back in the day, because Doxa makes amplifiers just like Electrocompaniet and Hegel, top-notch, over-the-top build quality. They offer, Doxa offers 25 years warranty on their products. Not many others do that. That tells you they build some good shit, okay? The problem with Doxa is they have a very niche focus. They make amplifiers between 40, 50 watts up to about 80, 90, 100 watts. So if you're looking for the next powerhouse or the nuclear power plant to power your speakers, Doxa will not be your choice. Hegel will be, Electrocompaniet will be. But Doxa makes smaller amps, very nice design. They focus a lot on design, but they focus a lot on build quality and sound quality. And they build amplifiers for those people who have very efficient speakers. Maybe not the biggest woofers, but like dual 6.5, dual 8s, maybe 110, and you use a 100 watt or 80 watt amplifier from Doxa, and you get a very superb sound. And not to mention a very superb over-the-top build quality and a warranty to match it and go with it. So maybe not the powerhouse, but for sure sound quality. They are very good company. They're still doing great. They were, I don't know what kind of distribution they're into now, but they were very heavily into Hi-Fi Klubben. Next amplifier company is Midgard Audio. This is one company that kind of like blew by me without catching my interest in many ways. Yes, they have made some good amplifiers, but I am not overly sold on them. They make good stuff, let me tell you that, but there was something about them. When they came out and when they really pushed the market, I remember it was in the sound pressure era that I came across them. And at that time, I was so heavily into Carver, Parasound, Electrocompaniet, DP, and a few others. So they really didn't catch my attention, and maybe that was the problem. I talked to a lot of people who adore these amplifiers. I have heard them a few times. I had never bought them. I never had them myself, but I've been with people who had them and tried them out. And like I said, they didn't catch my attention because a few of my contacts and friends and customers and stuff that had them, they didn't felt overly sold on them either. And I remember one guy who used to have DP, Dynamic Precision. He sold his Dynamic Precision and he bought two Midgard audio amplifiers, and he regretted it. So, and and at that time I had a DP at home. I'm thinking like, I'm not going to do the same mistake he did, because he was clearly not happy with them. So, but it's a good company, and I think they make kind of affordable stuff, not cheap. It's not cheap. Nothing from Norway is cheap. Let me tell you that. You're not going to find a $100, $200, $300, $400 amplifier from Norway. Not going to happen. And so a lot of people say they make good stuff, and a lot of servant people that I have talked to say they fit Søren Vega fairly well. But at that time, I had Dolly Helicon 800, and I was using my Dynamic Precision amp, and I had a Electrocompaniet as a reserve in the background, so I didn't feel the need to go out and test the Midgard audio amplifiers that came out. But they're still from Norway. They're still considered by many to be really good. So make your input. If you have heard it or if you have owned it, let me know what you think. Didn't catch my attention. Now we can go on to speakers, because there's a few of them on the list here. We're going to start with the speaker company in Norway that maybe paved the way for the rest of them. And this company didn't make any end user speakers. Like, you couldn't go and buy a complete speaker ready made. It's SEAS, and they make drivers, and they make high quality drivers, and they have for decades. And they are regarded by most to be one of the better, along with Perlis, Scanspeak, Morel, and so on and so on. So SEAS is one speaker company from Norway that has really taken the whole world by storm, and they have sales all over the world, and they're being used by DIY builders all over the world. They're being used by well-known speaker companies that use SEAS drivers, that buy drivers from SEAS. So they paved the way for the other companies I'm going to talk about, and one company that I'm going to mention here is no longer in business, and there was Pathos, Pathos, and I have had a couple of Pathos speakers. God, what have I not had? I remember I had a couple of speakers from the Lyric series. Don't remember the model name, because I bought some of the Pathos speakers in the early years when Pathos was well, not early years maybe, but when they still were young. I like them. Totally different from Søren Vega, that's for sure. But they still have a very good sound. And if you can find some Pathos speakers online or locally close to you, I wouldn't hesitate to buy a pair. I like their sound. Very hi-fi-ish and very high quality sound on them. And not because they're Norwegian or anything like that, but they had a very cool look. And you can say that, okay, Denmark has always been like the land of design and all that, but look at the stuff that came from Norway that was designed in Norway is just as high up there on design as anything from Denmark. So Pathos, yeah, I would not hesitate to buy Pathos today if I could find it. Here in the United States, almost impossible to find Pathos. I've looked, but I couldn't find anyone. The closest I could find, I think it was a couple of pairs up in Canada for sale on eBay, but that was about it. The next company is Forsman, and Forsman is still in business. Their attention and focus is on open baffle speakers. Not my required taste at all. I like them either sealed or ported, preferably ported. But Forsman has a good reputation of making some really high-end killer stuff. Another company from Norway that has really grabbed a lot of attention worldwide from audiophiles and people involved in the hi-fi business. Not the cheapest ones, once again, but if you are into open baffle speakers, the Forsman is absolutely a company you should look to. If that is your taste and that's your realm, and you want to look for new stuff or even used stuff, look up Forsman. I mean, you cannot go wrong. If I had a little bit more required taste for open baffle, they would probably fit me. I have heard a lot of open baffle speakers, everything from Dali to Forsman and many others, and there's something about the sound that doesn't grab me. I don't know what it is. I mean, open baffle for mids and tweeters are okay, but when it comes to the woofers, I feel that they get a little sloppy and a little dull and a little round, and it doesn't have that direct punch. It's kind of like roaming around you in a way. I don't feel that open baffle speakers are my cup of tea. But Forsman is a really good company. They make some killer looking stuff, so look them up. Next one is, I don't know if I'm gonna call it a company to look up, because they were only in business for a short period of time. I don't even think they put out many products, so I'm going to leave that one alone. So we have been through, let's start and just do a recap. We've been through Doxa, we've been through Forsman, we've been through Electrocompaniet, we've been through Hegel, Pathos, Dynamic Precision, Soundcare, Abrahamson, Seas, Tandberg, Audion, and Midgard Audio. And the one that I kind of like was on the fence, there was a company or a product one time called Griffin, but it was so short-lived. I don't even think I think they maybe got one product out, and Griffin speakers. Today there's other companies in Germany, I think it is, or England, that also is called Griffin. So I think they had some problems with the name also, so maybe that was part of it. But yeah, I'm going to leave Griffin alone. I know a couple of things about them, but you know, they went out of business before the internet era. So you know what, it's hard to find anything about them. I know it was started by 3 guys. I think it was down in a place called Horton or Grimstad or something like that. And they tried, but I don't think they really got a good traction to start off with. And I think they went out of business just as fast as they came onto the market. They maybe made 1 or 2 models and maybe had a little run for a year or so, but I think that was it. So I'm not going to put too much attention into that. But this was the first video of Sound of Norway. The next one coming up, I'm going to talk about Hegel, and then we're going to go do Electrocompaniet. Those 2 are my favorite. Dynamic Precision, I might do one on, but the 2 companies that I know more about and that I feel there is more information out there if you want to, because there's not much information about the vintage Dynamic Precision stuff online. So I'm going to do another video with Hegel, and I'm going to do one with Electrocompaniet, that's for sure. And they're all going to be called The Sound of Norway. This was the first one. This was an introduction. If you want to look up any of these, please try and do so. There is some information online about most of them. At least the ones that are still in business. There might be some difficulties finding anything about, except for what people put out there about Tandberg and Griffin and Pathos. Pathos can be hard to find something about, unless you find used sales ads, and you will find that. So that was it. Until next time, take care. I'm going to be making, well, okay, let me add this. There will be 2 more videos made today. So I'm going to try and keep this one at 26-27 minutes, because there's 2 more coming right after this one. When I said I had videos ready, most of my videos starts with a sketch and a layout, a written layout on what I want to do. So they're being recorded now. So see you later.